Right, we're off. So, 12th and final of the blind tasting challenge drams that were donated to me by Andrew AP Butler. Thank you very much for these, Andrew. This is the last one that's remaining. It's taken me a long time to get there because I've been a numpty basically, and lots of things on, and new jobs and everything like that, but finally back into, I'd like to say, some kind of routine of doing some videos, but that's clearly not happening. So let's crack on with dram number blind tasting number 12. Let's see how we go. So if you don't know the story of this, if you're coming in for the first time, which is unlikely, but just in case, Andrew's given me these 12 drams which have got labels that he's put on, but I've got to peel off to find out actually what it is. So I'm going into these completely blind, no idea what they're from. Of the other 11, I've had a blended whiskey, I've had a blended malt, I've had Scotch, I've had American, I've had Japanese. I'm trying to think if I've had anything else, because it's been quite a while since I was doing the first ones. But you know, there's no guarantee as to exactly what it is that I'm going to be pouring in my glass. So let's see. I've been kind of pleasantly surprised how relatively close I've been getting to them. You know, I've not nailed it on the head. I think one I got maybe the distillery right, but even then it was more by luck than judgment. But I am quite pleased that I've managed to get roughly in the ballpark of where they've been blind tasting wise, and that really is due to the fact that I've tasted a lot in a relatively short space of time, particularly early on doing the blind tasting, because I've done 366 in 366 days, and you become used to tasting stuff and you start to pick up the differences in terms of between a bourbon and a Scotch, and potentially some regions of Scotch, although you can't say for definite this is a Highland, but you can kind of start to whittle away at, you know, it's like a process of elimination, going right, it doesn't really have this element, you know, it's got this particular flavor, so it's probably not bourbon, it's probably, you know, maybe Scotch. Right, so let's start thinking about the regions, let's start thinking about which ones I've had before and similar styles, and you can get yourself down a cul-de-sac, but you can start to kind of, by process of elimination, kind of go, right, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. We're getting closer. You start to get yourself down to a sort of filtering down to maybe 3 or 4 or 5 distilleries. If you're looking at Speyside, it's a bit harder because, you know, it's like, it's a Speyside, it's got maltiness, right? Okay, it's getting a bit harder because there's a lot of distilleries there, but yes, you do start to pick it up. So, and there've been a couple of people that have gone like, yeah, I just wouldn't have a chance. Well, try it. You probably be surprised if you drink whiskey on a regular basis, particularly if you drink different whiskies on a regular basis. If you're just having the same bottle, ideally not night after night after night, but if you're having the same bottle, or you only drink Islay whiskies and that's all you do, then yes, it's going to be harder because you don't have anything else to compare against. It's going to be an Islay whiskey or could be anything else. Whereas if you're trying whiskies from around the world and around Scotland and different regions and blended whiskey and single malt whiskey and everything like that, they are all different. I did 366 whiskies. Not one of them was the same. A couple were kind of close together in terms of flavour profile, but none of them tasted exactly the same. So there is differences between all of them. Absolutely all of them. So give yourself that exploration, give yourself that opportunity to get your taste buds to try different things, even if it is buy miniatures. Miniatures are a great thing, and to be honest, they're pretty underrepresented in the whiskey market. More companies should be selling miniatures, so that's why the likes of Master and Malt are really good for their drinks by the dram, because it gives you opportunities to try things without getting the full bottle, and it really can help you develop your ability to taste. You know, I have no claim to any kind of skill or talent or whatever. It is literally just because of the fact that I've had so many whiskies in such a close space of time, so many different whiskies in such a relatively short space of time, that it's become easier to whittle these blind tastings down, because I've got the things. I mean, my memory's pretty shocking anyway, but you tend to, oh right, there was that flavour with that one, and a lot of the bourbons that I had this flavour profile. You know, Islay's relatively easy because it's peated, but even then you can get kind of Speyside peated and all this lot. but you can start to go, okay, I didn't guess what distillery it was, but at least I picked it was a bourbon. You know, there's been some that Andrew given me that I've never had before, so I had no bloody chance of knowing what it is. The bourbon that I had like a couple of weeks ago, I'd never even heard of the distillery, so what chance did I have? But I was at least able to go, yes, I'm fairly confident this is a bourbon, because I'd had that many bourbons before that the flavours inherent in that sample that I'd had were very, very similar to a lot of the ones I had. So you're not, you know, you might have a hidden talent that you might be able to pick out these distilleries like some kind of savant person that's got a photographic taste memory, if that's what you'd call it, where you could try something and you'd instantly remember it against every other whiskey that you've ever had, and if you were to try it 10 years later, you'd be able to go, oh, that's Highland Park 12-year-old because I had it on this day and that day, because you'd be able to remember it. That is a gift, but with practice, and it's kind of a fun practice, you know, could be a bit pricey, but you know, that will help you get to that stage. So it's been pleasantly surprising for me to go, oh, actually, yeah, I have been able to pick up some of these flavours. So, shall I crack on with this? Because I've been rabbiting on for long enough as it is. Let me get me a bit of paper for the colour. So I'm doing this literally 5 minutes after I did the Cardew, and the Cardew colour was a bit weak, bit light, and a bit lacking, for want of a better word. This, if I can get my chunky fingers out of the way, this a little bit deeper, a little bit darker, slightly orangey in colour I'm picking up. I've got this white sheet kind of here that I can use to get the colour, and there's a definite orange tinge to this, kind of like a slight burnt orange, almost a little bit darker than orange marmalade, but I wouldn't really call it amber. Amber's a bit more yellow. This has definitely got more of an orange tinge to it. So I'm going to go with like burnt orange, not quite as watery as the Cardew was, but it's got a nice shine to it as well. It looks healthy. Wow. Okay, so this may be cask strength and I don't have any water with me, so I might have to pause to get some water depending on when I've tried it, but really intense on the nose. And again, that sort of oranginess comes through, like a really concentrated orange peel. Some good spice on there. God, that's really fruity, really fruity. There's a slight tropical element to it. What a cracking nose. That's absolutely gorgeous. But it's really fruity. It's like a proper fruit salad element. There's like tropical fruit, there's a bit of mango in there, there's oranges, there's orange peel, there's like candied peel as well. It's a lovely sweetness to it. And I have no fucking idea where this is from. Not a clue. It's not American to me. It's not giving any indication of bourbon or American whiskey, but it really is. If it's Scotch, it's unlike any other Scotch I've had. It's so unscotchy. It's the fruit. It's the intensity of the fruit. There isn't any kind of malty character to it. What the bloody hell is that? This could be something really like wacky, like Australian or Japanese or Indian or something like European, German, Austrian, something like that. I'm going to have to try it. This is where I'm finding out if it's going to be cask strength or not, because it's the intensity of the aromas that's giving me the impression that this is a high alcohol content, but it might just be the intensity of the flavour rather than the actual alcohol percentage itself. So the fruitiness is still there. Ooh. Whoa. Okay, wasn't expecting that. So the fruitiness is still there. I've said that already, haven't I? Slightly weaker than it is on the nose. It's not quite as intense as on the nose. Then as you swallow, there's this element of smoke. And it's there as you swallow, right at the back of your throat. It's kind of there, but it's not really a peatiness. And then you swallow. And then all of a sudden there's this little growing sensation spreads around your mouth of smoke. But it's a slightly ashy smoke. It's not quite cigarette-y, which really puts me off. It's not that kind of lingering cigarette sensation if you've ever smoked a cigarette. And tragically I have in the past. And it's not nice at all. It really isn't nice. This is just borderline tolerable. It's not intense. It's a very, very soft, very gentle smokiness. But it's a slightly ashy smokiness. It's not peaked. It's not TCP, iodine, medicinal, that sort of thing. This is more fire smokiness. But it's really gentle and really, really subtle. This is really refined whiskey. It's bizarre. I'm loving that nose. And there's none of that smokiness that's on the palate on the nose. The nose is fruit and a slight sharpness, but it's really kind of, like I say, candied peel as well as fresh orange peel, as well as tropical fruits. Am I picking up the smoke because I've already tried it? Possibly, but it's really, really hard to pick up. So, starts off fruity, you swallow, and then this smoke comes back up. Not in a type thing, not in a, you know, I've just coughed up. It sort of suddenly appears as if by magic. I haven't got a clue where this is from. I genuinely don't. I don't think it's Scotch. But I honestly can't give you any concrete kind of confident prediction as to where this is from. This I don't think is Scotch or American. I don't think it's Irish. I think it is something like Indian, Japanese, Austrian, German, maybe Taiwan. Something like that. Something unusual that is trying something different. Or I remember having, I think it was Californian, I can't remember the name of it, where he did, it wasn't a Lost Distillery, I can't remember what it was called, Lost Spirits maybe, where it was like really, really intensely peated, and it was one guy essentially doing it himself, and he was doing just bonkers stuff, like unlike anything else anybody was doing. It's something like that, where it's like a really craft distillery, where he's just doing something, he, she, whoever, is doing something totally wacky, unlike anything else, just to be completely individual. Or it's something like Asia, maybe, or I don't Indian. I've had a couple of Paul Johns, and I don't think this is Amaret, and I think that's pretty much all there is with Indian. It might be a Paul John, or it's something like a European. It's something quite idiosyncratic from, or maybe Scandinavia, something like that, something really unusual. I'm intrigued though. It's very, very good, but it's very, very unusual and distinctive. So let's see. Ooh, okay, right. Well, I've not had this on the challenge either, and I'm assuming that it's Japanese, because it is, if you can see this when it focuses, there we go, Kirin whiskey, single malt, 18-year-old? 18-year-old. I didn't try and guess what the age was, and I didn't try and guess what the percentage was. Now, he doesn't put the percentage, so I'm going to go for 43 or 46. But I probably wouldn't have gone for 18-year-old, to be honest. I would have said it's a bit younger. With that intensity of the fruitiness, I would have said it's younger than 18. I probably would have gone 12, I think, maybe as young as 10. But that is very, very good indeed. Now, Kirin, I would associate with beer. But it might be that they do whiskey as well, because there are certain producers out there that do something called G whiskey, which is essentially craft whiskey, and it's wineries a bit like Mondo Shuzo that do the fabled Fujikai. It might be Kirin the brewery that have gone into distilling. So let's see what happens here. So that's just a review. So what is that? So that's a 50%. That's not the one. Fujisan Roku even. Come on, oh, maybe it is that one, or is it Fuji Katemba? Okay, so there's a couple, which doesn't help. So there is Fuji Gatemba Kirin 18-year-old single malt, which I'm looking at whiskyauctioneer.com, and they sold this bottle. When was it? Is it for sale? Have they even sold it? Winning bid 150 quid. I don't know when that was. That is an 18-year-old. It is 43%. So this is technically one of the world's largest distilleries, producing both malt and grain, also having its own cooperage and bottling plant. Really? Okay, right. There is also a Fuji Sanroku 18-year-old, which is a place called decanter.com, which I've never heard of, and the price is in pounds, so whether they're actually based in the UK, at £380.69. Fuji Kirin is, along with Asahi, the major maker of soft drinks and alcoholic beverages in Japan. Although not a whiskey specialist as such, it does nonetheless participate in the whiskey market. In fact, Kirin has a distillery at the foot of Mount Fuji, Japan's sacred mountain. The name Fuji Sankoru translates as at the foot of Mount Fuji, and the 18-year-old is the cream of the crop, produced at Fuji Gatemba Distillery. It's a very surprising richness and a deep, fruity and woody aroma. We recommend you give it a try. So whoever this decanter.com is, never heard of them, but they look to... okay, apparently they're based in Japan, but their price is in pounds. They specialise just in that. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Sanroku. So the bottle looks like this. It is 43%. In terms of price, yeah, I'm just looking at the whiskey magazine. So it's Martin Nue and Dave Broom, and the tasting notes that they've given is actually quite pleasingly pretty similar. There, you know, Martin says there's a distant peaty echo, which is a very, very good description of what was there. A refreshing aperitif. Yeah, actually, there's a freshness to it. It's this citrusy, tropical, fruity, pear, light fruit element to it, which makes it quite refreshing as a whiskey. I really like that. From the looks of it, looking online, it is ridiculously hard to get hold of. So I count myself incredibly lucky to have that. And this will count towards my Project 500 when eventually I get around to actually putting these videos together and doing the rest of them. But as the last one of the 12, that's something really special and really distinctive. And if you can find this anywhere, I would very much recommend it as something really distinct, really different, really unusual for a whiskey, but very pleasant. And Japanese whiskey, when it's good, is very good indeed, and it's refined, and it has a delicacy, and it's almost a good representation of the culture of Japan, in terms of there is care and attention to detail when it's done properly, and this is really good. This is not a big whiskey. This is a pre-dinner whiskey, but this is one that will definitely surprise people very much. That slight peatiness, a peaty echo, fantastic term, Martin, absolutely phenomenal term that, because that is spot on. It is so subtle right at the end, and it catches you off guard, because you swallow and you think that's it, and you're thinking it's a light fruity whiskey, very pleasant, and then it just emerges. It doesn't explode, it doesn't appear, it just delicately just so all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, hang on, I've got smokiness there. Well, where's that come from? But it's not overpowering, it doesn't outstay its welcome, it just lingers and just supports everything else that's come before. That is an absolute cracker. Really is one of, you know, a really outstanding whiskey. Outstanding in the fact that it does something unlike anything else that I've come across before, which is always a good thing, but in a good way. That's a stonker. Not a stinker, an absolute stonker. Great stuff. Right, Andrew, thank you so much for those 12. That's been certainly an education. It's been very, very good fun doing them. And for some of the samples that you've given me, in fact, no, for all of them, but some of the samples in particular, the rarity of them, the price of them, to come across those, to actually experience them, is a genuine honour. And I count myself incredibly lucky to have met somebody like you, and then to have had so many samples off you for a start, but some of the samples that you've given me that I never would have even seen, let alone be fortunate enough to actually try and comment on. So thank you very much for that. And hopefully moving forward I will be able to do some videos where it will literally be a look at a distillery as a whole. So I'll be tasting all the range if possible. I've got a few back here where I've literally got samples of pretty much their main releases, and I'm hoping it'll be quite interesting to see how they evolve and the differences between them, as well as a bit more of a kind of in-depth history about the distillery itself. But that's me done. Blind tasting challenge is complete. I will give myself a score, I shall say 7 out of 10. It was okay. Could do better, but to do better I would have to be a proper expert, which I am not. But yes, I definitely recommend doing blind tastings as much as you can, because it really does get you thinking. And if you can do a blind tasting where you've got a bunch of friends and basically you all bring a bottle but you all bring it blind, so you only know which one is yours, try and decant it into a separate bottle if you can, or at least bring a bottle where it's not distinctive. So if you're going to bring Hay Club and you just wrap paper around a bottle of Hay Club, it's pretty bloody obvious what it is. But if you decanted it into something else, nobody's going to know. And it's worth doing something like that and bringing Hay Club and being that guy. But trying it blind will give you something to talk about and actually might surprise a few people. But likewise, you know, try them, because you haven't got that preconceptions. You haven't got that, oh, it's a Speyside, I don't want to know. Oh, it's a blended whiskey. No, I don't drink blended whiskey. It's going to be crap. Because trying it blind, that's all out the window. It's about what's in the glass and what you think at that time. And you might surprise yourself. You probably will surprise yourself. So that's me done. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you again, Andrew. And I shall see you at the next one, whenever that may be. Cheers.